In 2006, this teacher, Samson Shelton, strangled Ashley Reeves. She was only 17 years old at the time, and after strangling her, he left her for dead near Belleville, Illinois. After her disappearance, her mother called Shelton many times because they saw the phone logs between them. On top of this, Reeves' friends informed her mother that she'd been seeing an older man. And on top of this, she planned to meet him the night before she disappeared. Obviously, her mother put two and two together. It was Samson Shelton. Following receiving this information, investigators brought Shelton in for questioning. Despite denying so many times, he actually admitted that he had killed her, or believed he had killed her. Miraculously though, 30 hours later, Ashley Reeves was found alive in the woods. It's literally a miracle that she survived this. In terms of sentencing, they sentenced him to 20 years, however he served 17 and was released a few months ago in April 2024. I'm honestly surprised he didn't get life in prison for this. If they didn't find Ashley Reeves in the woods at the exact time they found her, she probably would have died. She was laying on the ground, breathing very slowly. Let me know your thoughts about this case in the comments section below.
Let's talk about some of the craziest true crime documentaries that are coming out in October, because I think we're going to get some of the best of the year. The Menendez brothers are getting a documentary on Netflix where they're actually going to tell their own story. This is of course coming on the heels of the Netflix Ryan Murphy show about them, but in this one they're actually interviewed. Also, I'm Kaylin and I love giving recommendations if you want to follow along. And then 2 days later, we're actually getting a Scamanda documentary on Hulu. That's the story of how Amanda Riley scammed people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars by pretending to have cancer. It was originally a podcast, and so was Sweet Bobby, which is also getting a documentary this month. It follows one of the craziest catfishing stories I've ever heard, and you kind of just have to see it to believe it. And this one's kind of crazy, but there was a Chris Brown documentary kind of made in secret called A History of Violence. It's going to be on Hulu, and it was actually made by the people who made Quiet on Set earlier this year. And then in time for spooky season, Disney Plus is putting out Witches, The Truth Behind the Trials. It promises to tell a kind of unknown history about the witch trials starting back when they were taking place in Europe. And then the one I'm probably the most excited for is a Netflix doc called This Is the Zodiac Speaking. It's a 3-part docuseries that apparently really focuses in on one suspect in the Zodiac case. Which ones are you going to be watching this month?
In June 1997, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. got extremely lucky. Let me explain. He became a multimillionaire overnight after winning the $31 million Texas lottery jackpot. This was amazing, especially since before he won this, his life was full of financial struggles, and he, his wife, and 3 children battled every day to make ends meet. So winning this changed the family's life. Billy quit his job and took the family on a trip to Hawaii and generously donated to his church and helped out friends and family. However, not everything was perfect. You see, Billy's newfound wealth led to a lot of his old friends and peers asking him for money and help on a daily basis. This forced Billy to change his phone number, and things just kept getting worse. His life began to slowly unravel, leading to him separating from his wife. On May 22nd, 1999, just shy of the 2-year anniversary of his big win, Billy Bob Harrow Jr. sadly ended his own life. Billy had expressed his unhappiness to a financial advisor shortly before his passing, and he said, "Winning the lottery is the worst thing that ever happened to me."
This man's name is Paul Alexander, and he lived in the iron lung for 70 years. The reason he had to do this is because he contracted polio as a child. Now, living in the iron lung for 70 years is almost unimaginable because that is such a long time to be alive in this thing. But he didn't only do that. He also went on to become a lawyer in Dallas and Fort Worth. And he only recently passed this year at the age of 78, I believe. He graduated from the University of Texas in Austin. He went on to practice law for 30 years. He even had his own celebrations within his own iron lung. As you can see here, he's got balloons, TV, a nice setup. Polio made it so he couldn't even move his lungs. That's why he needed the iron lung. It creates negative air and cycles it back and forth so you can actually breathe. Without this, he would literally be dead. Polio has basically since been eradicated from the world. This is due to vaccines. However, there might be a resurgence because people are becoming anti-vax now. Get your kids vaccinated, what can I say? The most recent case of polio was July of 2022. This was the first case in 3 decades. Let me know what you think about Paul's story in the comment section below. As always, these videos are for informational purposes only.
This is one of the most evil doctors in American history. His name was no joke Dr. Fear, and he worked in the children's ward of one of the worst mental asylums. It was called Penhurst, and this is coming from a deep dive I just did on the Heart Starts Pounding podcast. Back in the day, a little boy named Robert Height was brought to Penhurst. He had developmental delays and was going to be put under Dr. Fear's care. But his parents went to see him 2 weeks after they dropped him off at Penhurst, and what they saw was horrifying. Robert was covered head to toe in cuts and bruises, and he had dried blood on the side of his face. He also didn't recognize his own mother, which they later found out was because of all the drugs that the doctors had given him. And this kind of treatment was what Dr. Fear was known for. He was known to ask other doctors what the most painful shot he could give someone was that wouldn't cause any damage, and then he would administer that shot to people he wanted to punish. And while he was a doctor there, he oversaw the entire children's ward, so he affected tons of children. It's hard to hear these stories from Pennhurst, but there's an important lesson there about disability rights and mental health care in the history of America. I cover that history as well as stories from actual people who were inside of Pennhurst on my podcast, Heart Starts Pounding. Give it a listen and let me know if you know of anyone that ever stayed at Pennhurst. A lot of those people are still alive.
This is the most haunted Walmart in America. It's in Galveston, Texas, and it was actually built on the site of the former St. Mary's Orphan Asylum, which was destroyed in the hurricane of 1900. There's actually a historical marker right near the Walmart that describes the story of this place. When the storm hit Galveston in 1900, the nuns attempted to save as many kids as possible, tied the children's wrists together with clothesline, and then tied the clothesline around the waists of the nuns. However, the hurricane hit harder than expected, and when people looked through the ruins of the orphanage afterwards, they found the bodies of all the children tied together, drowned, tied up to the nuns. Since this Walmart was built near the site of the original orphan asylum, many workers have claimed to have experienced paranormal activity inside. An employee at one point heard a girl crying for help, but when he looked for her, he couldn't find her. People have also reported seeing toys move by themselves in these aisles, and heard disembodied laughter. What do you think? Would you shop at this Walmart, or is it too spooky?
CCTV showed some of the most shocking footage of an XL bully I've ever seen. In a matter of days, a child would be dead. In November 2021, Jack Liss asked his mum Emma if he could go out to play. The 10-year-old should have been safe going to the local skate park. Unfortunately, he made a detour that would cost him his life. Not long after, Emma got a knock on the door that would change her life forever. Sirens could be heard in the background as Emma came to the horrific realization that her son had been attacked. As paramedics rushed to the scene, the local community was stunned. An XL bully named Beast had attacked the young boy, and soon Emma got the horrific news that Jack had not survived. Police then had the difficult job of finding out who was responsible and pursuing justice for Jack and his family. But Jack wouldn't be the only victim of this controversial breed. Hear Emma's heartbreaking story in her own words, and listen to other shocking cases on Crimes That Shook Britain, Mondays at 9 on the Crime and Investigation channel, or stream now on Crime and Investigation Play. I'll pop a link in my bio for more on Crimes That Shook Britain.
Have you ever heard of the Boy Lover Network? This is really disturbing, so viewer discretion is advised. So in 2011, international police smashed a dark web website called the Boy Lover Network. Here's a screenshot from the website. When investigators dismantled this website, 230 children were saved. Physically, they had been being held captive by pedophiles and filmed, and that abuse was uploaded online. In total, there were over 70,000 members of this website across the world, and authorities eventually uncovered 670 suspects. One of these suspects that was arrested was a man living in Georgia named Joseph Giddings. Now, I don't know why there aren't any photographs of the pedophiles involved in this. Anywhere online, if it was me, I would be blasting these creeps' photos out to the world. But let's talk about Joseph. Joseph, who went by the name Joe Cool on this CP website, was a senior member and moderator, meaning he had a lot of power over these pedophiles. And eventually an undercover officer contacted Joseph, and Joseph provided him with 2 DVDs full of the most graphic, vile CP CSAM you can possibly imagine. But Joseph only received 11 years in prison. And this happened in 2011, which means that Joseph is out in the free world again today. For victimizing thousands of children and being a part of one of the biggest pedophile rings on planet Earth, he got 11 years in prison. And although some arrests were made, I believe they arrested people in 30 different countries, they barely even carved out a chunk of the 70,000 pedophiles that were active on that website. That means that there are thousands, dozens of thousands of pedophiles that are out there in the world that were never caught, never exposed. They could be your friends, they could be your family, your boss, your coworker, your doctor. Yeah, I forgot to mention there were doctors, police officers, and teachers involved in this thing too. These people are everywhere. And in my mind, the only thing that I can do here is to help raise awareness and keep people talking about these things so they aren't forgotten. So we can hopefully put some pressure on government officials and people to actually do something about this shit. If you want to join me on my journey to expose pedophile rings, and you want to learn about the terrible things our own government does to promote people like that, listen to my podcast, The Conspiracy Files. It's available on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We do super deep dives on subjects like this. Or you can watch the video version here. If you haven't seen this video, this will enlighten you and show you that the government's are involved with these things.
This man killed his best friend for taking videos of his daughter. This case takes place in Russia in September 2021. Vyacheslav Machosov was a 34-year-old man who was known by his nickname Slava. He is a husband and father and a very hard-working man who worked in a factory to provide for his family. While working at the factory, Slava made friends with a 32-year-old man named Oleg who is on the left. The two became close and would often go out and get drinks together. Slava trusted Oleg a lot and considered him to be his best friend. When Slava and his wife needed someone to watch their children, Oleg would be there to help whenever. However, the trust Oleg grew with Slava was for a very unsettling reason. He built up the trust so he can get access to Slava's daughter, who was just 6 at the time. For a couple of years, if Slava and his wife needed someone to watch their kids, they would enlist Oleg every time, who was always happy to help his best friend. In September of 2021, Slava and Oleg were out drinking together, and at some point throughout the night, Oleg fell asleep. Slava then took Oleg's phone to see what he was looking at, and Slava found a very unsettling and disturbing video on his phone. He played the video and saw Oleg forcing himself on a female. Slava then made an awful discovery and realized the female victim in the video was his eldest daughter. And despite being overwhelmed by rage, Slava gave Oleg the opportunity to do one of two things. Either Oleg turned himself into the police along with all the evidence and admit to this awful crime, or Slava would take matters into his own hands. He told his former best friend that if he didn't choose the first option, he would kill him. But Oleg had other plans. Instead of turning himself in, he vanished. He ran from the village and went into hiding. Slava then went to the authorities and told them everything Oleg had done. After showing the police what he found on the phone, the police began a manhunt. The news of the crime spread like wildfire in the village, and people were extremely disgusted at what Oleg had done. And even worse, on a number of occasions, he would look after other people's children too. And many became worried that there could be more victims, and sadly, they were right. There was many more videos found on Oleg's phone which proved this wasn't his first victim. For 5 years, he would torment the young in the village and threaten them to stay quiet or else. Oleg would form relationships and friendships with people for this disgusting reason. And as I said, the police were supposed to start looking for Oleg, but after days, it came out they haven't even began searching for him yet. So Slava instead began to track him down. And after a week or so, Slava found him. What happens next is up to speculation, as some believe Slava wasn't telling the truth. Slava was able to track down Oleg and forced him into a secluded forest. It's here where Slava claims he forced Oleg to dig his own grave at knife point, and after digging the grave, Slava gave Oleg the same option again, either turn himself into the police or take his own life. After this second ultimatum, Oleg tried to rush at Slava, and according to Slava, Oleg accidentally stabbed himself in the stomach, resulting in him dying. Essentially, he ran into the knife a number of times. After this, Slava placed Oleg in the shallow grave and covered his body with dirt. He then left the forest and made his way back to the village. After some time passed, Slava turned himself in at the police station. He told them that Oleg stumbled into the knife during the scuffle outside the village in a forest. A week after Slava had seen the video, Oleg was dead. And this story about his death became big news and even spread to other countries. Many people looked at Slava as a hero, but legally he had killed someone who wasn't proven guilty yet. So Slava was arrested by the police. This had backlash as many people didn't see Slava as a danger to the public and believed he should be released at once. Everyone was on his side. Even a former Russian presidential candidate came forward and sided with Slava. After authorities analyzed Oleg's stab wounds, it was found the injury wasn't sustained in the forest like Slava claimed, but instead at a different location. Everyone then came together to fund Slava's legal battle, saying any father would have done the same thing. And in a landmark decision, the charges against Slava would change from murder to inciting someone to take their own life. And this charge carries a way lesser sentence than murder. In 2022, Slava was found guilty and was sentenced to 18 months in a strict Russian penal colony. Even to this day, Slava remained true to the story he told police and denies killing his best friend. Slava only served 6 months of his sentence after being freed a year early. So what are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Slava was in the right doing what he did? Let me know your thoughts on this. I'm very curious to see your guys' opinions.
This horrifying video went viral after this girl ended up dead. This video is incredibly triggering and disturbing, so please be warned. On the 7th of September 2012, a video was posted online titled My Story, Struggling, Bullying, Unaliving and blank. The girl who posted it was Amanda Michelle Todd. She was 15 years old, living in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, and I hope I've pronounced that right. Throughout the video, she tells a harrowing tale to her audience through flashcards. She states that when she was in 7th grade, which is around 12 to 13 years old, she moved in with her dad and was going online to try and make friends. She started talking to a stranger who essentially groomed her. He complimented her looks, and after around a year of doing this, he pressured her to reveal what was under her top. She had no idea he was actually screen recording. He went on to control and blackmail her by threatening to release these images. Now, he did end up exposing these images online, and police came to Amanda in 2010 to give her the news that these images were out there. She was obviously absolutely traumatized by this. She started using substances and alcohol to cope. Her family actually moved house, but unfortunately, this didn't end there. The following year, her online stalker reappeared. This time he made online social media accounts with the explicit photo and started adding her classmates as a friend. She was bullied at her new school as a result of this. She eventually had to move schools and she really needed a friend to turn to. It was actually a guy at her school that she ended up using as a shoulder to cry on. They got close, but he then pressured her to come over to his house. The pair ended up being intimate, and it transpired that he actually had a girlfriend. A week after this happened, Amanda was confronted by a big group of people. She was screamed at and physically attacked. She returned home and attempted to unalive herself. She had to get her stomach pumped and was then sent back to school, but unfortunately, her doing this actually just increased the bullying. It wasn't enough to get the trolls to leave her alone. She was taunted by her classmates, and in March 2012, the family had to move once again. The same exact routine then continued. The stalker would create new accounts when she went to a new school. He would then add her classmates and even her teachers and the parents of the kids. They would all end up seeing the explicit photos of the child, and it would cause her just more trauma. Her mental health continued to plummet, and despite getting counselling, she once again attempted to unalive herself. In the video that she ultimately posted online, she held up a card stating, "I have nobody, I need someone," and a sad face. On the 10th of October 2012, her body was found at her home. Amanda unfortunately could see no way out. Dutch police eventually came forward to state that they had arrested a man after finding chilling chat logs involving extortion. He was 35-year-old Aydin Coban. Now, he was charged with multiple serious offences, including SA, child SA material and extortion. There were a staggering 39 alleged victims. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced to just 6 years in prison for causing Amanda's death. He will then serve an 11-year prison sentence for convictions relating to 33 other victims.
The Haiti orphan smuggling case is a really bizarre one, so let's talk about it. On January 12, 2010, a massive earthquake hit Haiti. Thousands died, thousands were left without their homes, and after hearing about this earthquake, a group of 10 American Baptist missionaries from Idaho set off to head down there. So this group was associated with something called the New Life Children's Refuge. It was a group dedicated to finding homes for orphans. Now, after the earthquake, the New Life Children's Refuge leased a hotel in the Dominican Republic, where they intended on bringing orphans, according to their mission statement. So these missionaries flew to Haiti on January 22nd, and on January 26th, they had gathered a group of 40 children and they headed for the Dominican Republic. However, when they tried to cross the border, the missionaries were arrested. As it turns out, they didn't have the proper paperwork, and they had literally just been attempting to steal these children from their home country. This is really interesting now. These missionaries claim that all of these children were orphans. They had asked these kids if they had parents, where they had come from, and apparently they had all told them they're orphans. But when the kids were questioned at the border, it turned out that almost none of them were orphans. They all had families, they didn't know who these people were, and they had literally been taken. According to these children's parents and relatives, the missionaries had told them that after the earthquake relief efforts were through, they could come back and get their kids and bring them home. However, WikiLeaks leaked some documents relating to this, which clearly showed that the missionaries' mission statement was adoption. So they were planning on giving these kids away or rehoming them. But here's where things get incredibly weird. So in the days following the group's arrest, a man named Jorge Puello came forward and stated he was representing some of the missionaries. Jorge claimed that he was a lawyer, but it was later found out he's not a lawyer. And Jorge later admitted that at the time he was being questioned and investigated for participating in sex trafficking in El Salvador. He was also wanted for smuggling people across the US-Canadian border. Eventually, Jorge served time in Canada and the United States, and it's still really unclear what his whole deal with these missionaries was. So this is already bizarre, right? Like, what were these missionaries doing? They were trying to literally kidnap these children out of the country. They told the parents that they were going to bring them back, but clearly they stated they wanted to have them adopted. They lied about certain things. They lied about the kids being orphans, and they clearly just weren't being truthful. Well, things got even weirder when Bill Clinton inserted himself into the case. With everything going on at the time, he stated that they needed to find a solution to this quickly, because all those missionaries had been charged with kidnapping. Keep in mind, they had attempted to, according to the law, kidnap 33 children. Now, eventually, most of these people were freed and sent back to the United States, never served any time for any of this weird behavior. One woman named Laura Silsby got 6 months in prison there, but she was found guilty, sentenced to her time that had already been served, and she was let go. This is a really weird case. What do you guys think about all this? I know WikiLeaks inserted itself and leaked some documents because they believed that there was something weird going on here, but I just don't really know what it is, and I only like to make assertions if I have evidence. I am curious to hear your thoughts, though, in the comment section, because this is just really a strange story.
Imagine your brother-in-law dying under suspicious circumstances, but you can't trust the police to investigate. The victim's family are rich, powerful, and virtually run the entire island. You have no choice but to turn to a former NYPD detective who is now working as a private investigator. The key to most murder cases is the motive, but finding it won't be that simple. Killer Heat is a brand new red-hot thriller out now on Prime Video. Joseph Gordon-Levitt stars as private investigator Nick Barley. He ends up entwined in a world of deceit, lies, and mystery. But will he be able to uncover the truth, or will he be left to face his own mistakes and dark past? Now streaming on Prime Video.
Hammer coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
This man was going to plant flowers and grow food with this man's body. On December 24th, 2019 in Michigan, a 25-year-old man named Kevin Bacon was talking to another man on the dating app Grindr. Kevin was a hairdresser and was going through tough times in his life. He was trying to save money to move somewhere else so he can get a fresh start. Kevin told his roommate that he found someone on Grindr and that he was going out for the night. The doorbell camera shows him leaving around 5 p.m. and sadly, this was the last time he was ever seen. The next day was Christmas, and Kevin had planned to have breakfast with his entire family, but concerns started to grow when he didn't show up. After he missed the breakfast, his family called his cell phone, but there was no answer. They then went to his apartment, but Kevin was nowhere to be found, and fearing the worst, his father called the police to report him missing. Friends, family, and police searched neighboring towns, forest areas, and farmlands. For 3 days, the group searched for Kevin in hopes of finding him alive or clues on where he could be. They then found Kevin's car parked outside of a store, and inside the car was his phone, wallet, and some of his clothes. The police checked his phone and found messages with Kevin and another man, and it was the man he met on Christmas Eve. The police used this information, which led them to a house where a 51-year-old man named Mark Latunsky lived. And on the 28th of December, the police knocked on the door and conducted a search of the whole property. Mark invited the police in and was wearing no shirt and only a brown leather kilt. The police then went around the house and made their way into the basement where they found a secret room. And inside this room, they made a truly horrifying discovery. Mark had strung up Kevin by his ankles with rope, and chunks of flesh were missing from his body. Kevin had a stab wound on the back of his neck and his throat had been slashed. And also, Kevin's testicles were missing, and Mark used a knife to remove them and then deep fried them and ate them. After finding Kevin in this awful state, Mark was arrested and then he told the police his version of what happened. He told them the two of them met on December 24th after talking on Grindr. They agreed to meet in a parking lot, the same place Kevin's car was found. He then said that they agreed to act out a fantasy Kevin wanted to try. Kevin stripped naked and put on a blindfold, ankle restraints, and wrist restraints. They then went back to Mark's house where they had consensual sex, and after, Mark claimed that Kevin told him he wanted to end his own life. Mark then claimed that they agreed he would assist in killing Kevin, under the condition that Kevin's body would be used for a purpose. Mark said he used the knife to stab Kevin in the back of the neck and then took him to the secret room and strung him up with rope. He then opened up a trap door underneath where Kevin was hanging from and slit his throat. The blood drained from his body and dripped onto the dirt outside from the open trap door. This was done so Kevin's body can fertilize the plants outside the house. As part of the agreement, Mark said he would use Kevin's bone marrow to plant tulips, his intestines to grow chestnuts, and would use his muscles to make human beef jerky. Mark also admitted to cutting off Kevin's genitals and eating them. Mark is a father of 4 and a highly intelligent man, and he even earned a master's degree in chemistry. But he had many mental health issues like depression, anxiety, and even paranoid schizophrenia. He had medication that could help him with these issues, but his ex-wife said he refused to take them. Mark's story did have some inconsistencies though. While the two were texting on Grindr, Kevin had asked for a reassurance that he would be safe during the meeting multiple times. There were no signs that Kevin wanted to be hurt or killed by Mark. Mark even had other victims too who escaped, but they didn't suffer the extent Kevin did. Mark's husband of 3 years, Jamie Arnold, told the media he had no idea of Mark's mental health issues until July 2019. He said he suspected something was wrong with him, but didn't think he was capable of committing such a disturbing act. Jamie left the house in September and didn't live there during the time this happened. Mark was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for committing this awful act. This is just honestly disturbing, and it goes to show that you have to be careful with who you talk to online. May Kevin rest in peace. He did not deserve this at all.
Police have confirmed this week that some of the bones found on the Sunderland coast are in fact human. This could be someone's loved one, and police are now working to identify who this person is. If you hadn't heard about this yet, there were various reports that came in throughout February and March of body parts or bones being found at multiple locations in Sunderland, including Marine Walk near Taroka Beach and Queen's Parade in Seaburn. Some of the bones were quickly identified as being that of a baby seal, but other bones have been confirmed as being human. There could of course be a number of explanations for these body parts. An accidental drowning, a suicide, or it could be something more sinister. There were reports that I read of some of the body parts being found wrapped in plastic, which leads me to believe that it is something more sinister, but these reports have not been confirmed. I'll keep an eye out for any developments on this case, and I really hope they can identify this person so that they can be properly laid to rest.
I seen this video. It was a ghost call or whatever. So this police dispatcher received a call from a funeral home, but it was closed. And this happened at 3:28 a.m. by the way. I'm gonna let you guys hear the call and stuff, and let me see what you guys hear.
I hate hearing things, bro.
It respects the cops, bro, because I feel like cops be saying some and they can't say anything.
Hello, 911. This is Erica. How can I help you? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay, I heard like hello and it's cold.
I heard whispers. Apparently, the guy said help me, and then after she said hello again, it said help.
Yeah, because I heard can you help me?
And then they go send out police, a unit to go check out what's going on, if everything's okay. Guy gets there, realizes that the place is locked up. Place is locked up, bro. It's dark in there, and there's no sign of like life in the building, bro. So it's like, who the fuck would have called
at that time?
Yeah.
Where was that at?
Colorado.
If there are any cops out there who experience freaky shit, let us call you. Let's hear that scary shit.
You know what's the craziest part too?
This is the moment Walter Medina was apprehended last week after holding a woman hostage for over 2 months and subjecting her to horrific abuse. The victim burst through the door of a gas station on April 1st. She was visibly bruised and beaten, and she was asking for help. Staff immediately called 911, but Walter managed to escape in his van. A high-speed chase ensued with Lakeland Police Department and Florida Highway Patrol hot on Walter's tail. He flew down the highway at speeds reaching 100 miles per hour, and eventually he crashed into a barrier, wrecking his van. He stepped out of his van, and as he reached back inside, presumably for a weapon, the police deployed their canine Rico, and he took Walter down to the ground. Walter was arrested and he was stretchered away, and his victim was taken to hospital. She had multiple broken ribs from being beaten with a baseball bat. She had extensive bruising all over her face and body, and she had multiple puncture wounds from being stabbed with a screwdriver. Walter Medina has previously served prison time for false imprisonment after kidnapping another woman, and he now faces multiple charges, including armed kidnapping and attempted murder in the second degree.
What this woman escaped from is like something from a horror film. Earlier this week, a dramatic scene unfolded in Florida. It was a typical Monday morning in Tampa, with people going about their usual business. That was until a van appeared in the local area. A woman escaped from the van and ran to ask for help. She flew into the Walgreens pharmacy and begged people to ring police. Horrifically, the woman had several injuries on her body, including on her face and puncture wounds. The staff rang police, who immediately turned up to investigate. Now, the woman had her identity withheld, but it transpired that she'd allegedly met a man named Walter Medina in January. She told police that he'd assaulted her with a baseball bat and a screwdriver. The 48-year-old man was arrested after a dramatic car chase that ended in a crash. He was charged with multiple offences, including attempted murder and armed kidnapping. The woman alleged that the man had been keeping her captive in his house, torturing her and assaulting her for an agonising 2 months. She states that he gave her substances and was mentally and physically abusive. The woman actually had broken ribs and was taken to hospital. She said that she'd been transported by a van by him and used the opportunity to escape when he left the van. Officers stated this suspect's violent reign of terror is finally over.
Disturbing episode of La Rosa de Guadalupe. Ooh. This episode was about Justin Bieber, right? Really? Justin Bieber was going to be in Monterrey, Mexico. And a lot of people were going crazy over Justin Bieber tickets. Like all the teenage girls wanting to see all their crush. It starts off with these girls. They're around the age of 13 to 14. Super hardcore believers. If you see in the room, they literally have like pictures all over. So obviously they want to get tickets as well. The tickets are like 2,000 pesos, which is like $100 and something US. Rosaura is like, oh, I don't want my 15 anymore.
I'm really wondering when the fuck this is going.
So Lolita, she's even like, oh, I'm gonna get a job. She ends up getting a job at a little cafe. They find out these tickets are getting sold online as a pre-sale. And they're like, fuck, how are we even gonna get the ticket? The girls end up saying like, yo, we should camp for them. And they stay there all fucking night. The next morning comes, they're sold out. And then out of nowhere, Rosada is like, I'm gonna put on social media, is there anybody who has a ticket? I will give them my virginity for a ticket.
I had a feeling it was gonna end like
and
this.
She ends up gaslighting her into saying
She should do it too.
She's like, you're right, I have to do whatever it takes to see Justin Bieber. A couple days pass and like some guy tries to approach Lolita at her job. She's like, what are you doing, 30? And he's like, you're the one who posted this shit on social media, what the fuck? Out of nowhere, her friend Rosaura comes to school with a fucking ticket all hyping. Another girl that has a ticket as well is like, let me see your ticket. They compare it to each other. Your ticket kind of looks off. They go to like the booth and shit to make sure if it's real or not. They scan it and it's like, nah, like this ticket doesn't work. It's fake. She goes to the guy.
This woman from Cheshire killed her boyfriend by running him over with her car. It was spring 2022 and philosophy student Alice Wood was dating Ryan Watson. Ryan was just 24 years old and was working as a support worker for the brain injury charity Headway. The pair were living together in Road Heath and had recently bought a home together. It was around 11:30 p.m. on the 6th of May when the pair were attending a party in Stoke-on-Trent. They'd both been drinking and tension was growing throughout the night. Witnesses reported that Ryan had been getting on quite well with another female at the party and Alice wasn't happy. Alice accused Ryan of flirting with the other female, and the pair started arguing about who should drive home. It's reported that Alice then drove the pair about 15 minutes back to their home in Oak Street in Road Heath. Neighbours then reported hearing shouting, slamming of doors and the revving of a car. When Ryan was out of the vehicle, Alice used the car as a weapon and launched the vehicle at him. She intentionally drove at him 3 times. On the 3rd attempt, she did hit him with the vehicle and dragged him over 150 metres along the road. She then decided to stop the car and pretended to neighbours that it was an accident. She asked the neighbour to ring the ambulance for them. Ryan's cause of death was determined to be crush asphyxiation. Alice wrote to the judge to claim that she didn't murder her boyfriend, she simply used the car as a weapon for intimidation. The judge did not accept this, and ultimately Alice was sentenced to 18 years in prison for murder.
Martin Weiss is another Nickelodeon pedophile that they don't want you talking about. And he defended pedophilia allegations against him by claiming that his 11-year-old victim wanted it. This is Martin Weiss. He's a former Hollywood talent agent and a pedophile. Back in 2011, one of Martin Weiss's former clients, an 18-year-old actor turned musician, reported him to the police. This client claimed that Martin Weiss sexually assaulted him from the age of 11 all the way till the age of 15, or the entire time that he was his talent agent. Martin Weiss also threatened the victim's career. This is a quote from the press release. They said, "The victim said Martin told him that what they were doing was common practice in the entertainment industry, and if the victim were to tell anyone, it would ruin the victim's career and hurt them both." The victim, though, finally fed up with the abuse and fearing for the safety of other children, went to the police. That's when Martin was ultimately arrested and charged with 8 felonies. But as reported in the LA Times, when Martin was confronted by authorities about the assault of a minor, he claimed the kid wanted it. This is a quote from the LA Times. During the November 15th conversation, Martin Weiss claimed the boy invited the interaction and claimed that the Penn State situation was different because those kids didn't want it. So Martin Weiss, who was a prolific talent agent, worked on a number of different shows like iCarly, Parenthood, The Muppet Movie. So yeah, this is extremely disturbing, and I think that the Nickelodeon reckoning is still going to continue for a while.
This is the Pitbull video, one of the hardest cartel execution videos to watch, explained. The video that I'm about to explain is extremely graphic and I don't recommend searching for it. The video begins with the man lying on his back on the ground, and 2 men are holding his legs open. He's being restrained. And in total, there is 5 perpetrators and 1 victim. And also 2 pit bull dogs. Apparently, this is the victim's punishment for allegedly doing something with a kid or to a kid. The victim is naked, and at the start of the video, the dog has done most of the work. The dog already ripped off the man's privates, and it's just a bloody mess. The dog continues to rip pieces of flesh off of where his privates used to be, and the victim is being held down, and he is also gagged so he can't scream. But sometimes the gag came loose, and at this point you could hear the man scream in pain. The victim was even talking, but I couldn't translate it, but that means he was completely conscious during this, which I can't even imagine the pain. As a man, this might be one of the worst videos out there. Funky Town is bad, Ghost Rider is bad, but as a man, I can't imagine anything more painful than a pit bull ripping off your junk while you're still alive. Not many people mention this video with the other disturbing ones, but it's definitely up there. There's not any information about the victim after the video. I don't know if he died, but it's safe to assume he did. He lost a lot of blood, and if a dog eats your privates, you will most likely get an infection and die from it. All in all, this video is very graphic, very real, and very disturbing. Please do yourself a favor and never go searching for this video, especially if you're a man.
So this is incredibly disturbing. A teacher at a Christian school in Florida was just arrested for using a yearbook to make images of his underage students online. You can't make this stuff up. This is what's happening every day here in America. So this is 67-year-old Stephen Hauser. He taught 3rd grade science at the Beacon Christian Academy in Newport Richey, Florida. Now, everybody seemed to love Stephen. That is, until an anonymous tip was made recently that led to his arrest. So, according to Stephen himself, yes, he admitted this, he used a yearbook containing photos of his students to generate these child porn images. I don't know exactly how many videos or photos Stephen had in his possession, but he admitted to using 3 of his underage students' photos to create this disgusting material. And according to a news report, authorities found 2 CP photos and 3 CP videos in Stephen's possession. I don't know if that stuff was AI generated or not, but either way, this is just a disturbing, sick story. And it's frightening thinking about how predators like this guy are going to be able to use AI and technology like that to fulfill these sick and twisted fantasies that they have. Like, what regulations do we have to prohibit this stuff from happening? After all, a tip from somebody was what got Stephen arrested. Who knows how many millions of other people are out there doing this sort of thing that haven't been caught and may not ever be caught. It's truly just some disturbing stuff, and I hate even thinking about it. If you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife Courtney. It's available on all streaming platforms.
These are family photos with disturbing backstories. Up first is a picture of a father and daughter, right? Well, this is Franklin Delano Floyd and Suzanne Savakis. And Franklin kidnapped Suzanne in 1974 when she was under the age of 10. It was his stepdaughter, and he would go on to raise her as his own daughter, putting her through high school under several pseudonyms and having a son with her in 1988. He would then marry her in 1989 under the name Tanya Hughes. In 1990, Suzanne had decided to leave Franklin and take her son Michael with her. And in April of that year, she was found beaten and bruised on the side of the highway. And she would eventually die in the hospital. Michael then went into foster care and was adopted, only to be kidnapped by Franklin Floyd in 1994 and never to be seen again. Next up is just a normal family photo, right? Well, the man in the yellow sweater is actually John Edward Robinson, who is a serial killer. And the baby that he's holding is Tiffany Stassi, whose mother he murdered the day before. He later gave baby Tiffany to his brother, saying she was adopted. His brother, along with Tiffany, didn't find out the truth for 15 years. Only 8 of his victims have ever been identified, and he's been on death row since 2000. Finally is just a picture of a mother with her 2 sons. Well, the kid on the right's name is Bart Whittaker, and he paid 2 of his buddies to murder his family that night. They would kill the mother and brother, but the father who took the photo survived. Bart Whittaker was sentenced to death, but after his father strongly opposed of it, which makes no sense, Texas Governor Greg Abbott granted him clemency, and he is now serving a life sentence.
The child's death was thought to be an accident until shocking text messages were revealed. It was the 15th of June 2023. Samantha Wishman was 32 years old, living in Wisconsin with her boyfriend and his 3-year-old son. Police were called to a home in Marinette on the day in question by Samantha. She reported that the 3-year-old had fallen down the stairs the night before. When officers arrived at the property, the little boy was not breathing. According to police, the father of the child seemed really frantic and wanted to get him to hospital straight away. Samantha, however, was reportedly much more calm and seemed to be trying to get the other children under control. The boy tragically passed away after being rushed to hospital. Now, initially the child's death was classed as an accident, but that's when everything started to change. Investigators determined that the death was not an accident as a result of a fall. This was after the autopsy showed that the child had broken ribs, a punctured lung, concussion, and bruising on his head and body. It was determined that he died from blunt force trauma. Investigators seized Samantha's phone as part of the investigation, and what they found was truly chilling. She allegedly sent disturbing text messages to the child's dad stating, "I'm ready to hurt these mother bleep kids. Nobody bleep understands. I can't breathe. This is so much harder now that I'm having more problems breathing. These mother bleep won't bleep. Stop. I'm ready to lose my bleep. I can't breathe. I can't yell, so I'm just the joke around here." An expert claimed that the injuries on the boy's body were no accident. Samantha is now facing charges of first-degree reckless homicide and neglecting a child.
This girl was killed and had all of her teeth removed by a cartel member while on vacation in Mexico. The body of 23-year-old Lisbeth Flores was found dead in the Mexican town of Matamoros. The sad thing is, Lisbeth was a mother of 2 and was also visiting Mexico for vacation. On August 9th, 2023, Lisbeth told her mother that she would be crossing the border into Matamoros to visit her boyfriend. Lisbeth assured her mother that she would return later that evening. This wasn't her first time crossing the border, but for some reason, her decision to do it did not sit right with her mother at all. Maybe it was her instincts telling her something bad was going to happen. But regardless, she let Lisbeth go. However, when Lisbeth failed to return home that night, her mother knew something was wrong. She filed a missing persons report immediately the next morning. But tragically, the day after filing, Mexican officials discovered Lisbeth's lifeless body abandoned on a field in Matamoros. And the condition of her remains were absolutely horrific. She had been brutally assaulted and all of her teeth were removed from her mouth before she died. And the fatal injury seemed to be from a powerful blow to the head using this large rock that was discovered at the scene. Some say it was robbery, others say it was sexual assault, but no one really knows what happened exactly between Lisbeth and her killer. The good thing is the killer was arrested. Braulio Martinez was caught at his residence in connection with the murder, and after pleading no contest, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison, which many people thought wasn't a long enough sentence. This is just so sad, and due to the violence in this area, Lisbeth's mother is now without a child, and her own 2 kids are left without a mother. But luckily, local businesses stepped up by contributing funds to her children's education. As this kind gesture definitely helped, nothing will bring back their mother, Lisbeth Flores. May she rest in peace.
The death of Lil Peep is always a story that makes me sad. So if you don't know who Lil Peep was, he was a songwriter, a rapper, a producer, musician, and he helped kind of pioneer the emo trap movement. So Lil Peep, whose real name is Gustav, really shot to stardom in 2016-2017. He had been making music for a long time before that, but it was in those years when people really started to notice him. He started appearing on the covers of magazines, and he amassed a huge fan base. Now, I actually was going to go see Lil Peep a night or 2 before he died. He played in Texas, and I was going to go see him, but I remember saying to my friend, I'll catch him the next time that he comes to town, but sadly that didn't happen. So on November 15th, 2017, Lil Peep was in Arizona. He was playing a show in Tucson that night, but nobody had really heard from him for a while. And at that point, the tour manager headed onto the tour bus to see what was up with him. And that's when he discovered the already lifeless body of Lil Peep. The official cause of Lil Peep's death was an overdose. At the time of his death, he had Xanax, fentanyl, marijuana, cocaine, tramadol, hydrocodone, hydromorphone, and oxycodone and oxymorphone, which is an absolutely insane amount of drugs in his system. But it's some of Lil Peep's final posts on Instagram on the day of his death that are really haunting. In this video, posted only a few hours before he would go on to pass away, Lil Peep is seen dropping an unidentified pill around his mouth, trying to swallow it. Obviously, I can't show the video here because I don't want this to get taken down, but it really is haunting. And shortly after this, keep in mind this is the day he died, he made this post that said, "When I die, you'll love me," featuring him performing on stage. Sadly, he would pass away only a few hours after posting this. There's no doubt that Lil Peep fundamentally changed the music industry, and he would have been one of the biggest stars of today if he were still with us. I still miss him a lot, I still listen to his music all the time, and yeah, this is just a very, very sad story.
"Oh my god, have a total weirdo in my bathroom, a little scared," is one of the last text messages this woman ever sent before she was murdered. Sherry Carter was a 29-year-old aspiring lawyer from Florida. It was the 31st of January 2011, and Sherry was trying to make some extra money to get herself through law school. She started working as an escort in order to fund her studies, and posted an online ad for clients under the pseudonym Stephanie. A local police officer named Jimmy Dak Ho responded to the ad. Jimmy hadn't been working that day and made arrangements to go to Sherry's apartment in Boynton Beach. When he arrived to her home at 4:40 p.m, he actually went to go and get undressed in the bathroom when she sent that text message to her boyfriend. She'd begun to have second thoughts and sent the text to her boyfriend in order to raise an alarm. Her boyfriend kind of misjudged this situation and texts back in a joking manner, "Don't let him sniff my deodorant, lol." He obviously hadn't realised she was in actual danger. She texts back saying, "No really, you have no clue." Just minutes after she sent the text, Jimmy came out of the bathroom, handcuffed her, and then shot her twice. It was Sherry's boyfriend who discovered her a while later on the floor of her apartment. He obviously immediately called emergency services and she was rushed to hospital. Tragically, she passed away 4 days later. Officers went through Sherry's phone and identified Jimmy through phone records. When questioned, he claimed that he'd changed his mind about the arrangement with Sherry and refused to pay her. He said he acted in self-defense and that his gun had gone off by mistake. He denied murder and the case went to trial. The court heard how Jimmy had actually got angry when she refused to sleep with him and he handcuffed her and shot her in the abdomen and the neck. CCTV footage was used to paint a picture of what happened that day. Jimmy arrived at 4:40 p.m. and left at just 4:56 p.m. He threw the murder weapon into a nearby canal and casually went out for food with his girlfriend that night. It was later revealed that Jimmy did have an extensive history of being abusive towards women. He'd been physically and verbally abusive and had also made inappropriate advances. He was found guilty of both kidnapping and murder and given 2 life sentences.
I'm not in the car. No, I'm not. You're going to jail. Oh my god. No, what the You are going? What the Try and get it on video. Try and get it on video. I'm getting it on video. Try and get it on video. Get it on video. Get it on video. Sam. What the is your problem?
The woman you just saw in that video getting pulled out of the car by the cop is Samantha Alonzo Luna. So on June 16th, 2018, Samantha was driving with her friend outside of a local oyster festival. That's when officers associated with the local Humboldt State University pulled her friend's car over. So according to the officers, one of the people in the car was sticking their head out of a sunroof. And that's what led to them pulling the vehicle over. So after the car gets pulled over, Samantha's friend gets arrested, and Samantha starts questioning the officers exactly why her friend was arrested. The officers then started questioning Samantha. So when questioned by the police, Samantha told the officers that her last name was Luna. But they tried to argue that on her license it said Alonzo Luna. And even though Samantha pleaded and told them that her last name is Luna, these officers weren't having any of it, and they dragged her out of the car and immediately began screaming at her that she's going to jail. And this whole interaction escalated to an absolutely insane level. Because during all of this, Samantha grabbed the hair of the blonde police officer. And other officers had to come with scissors to cut the officer's hair off so that she could get free. The video of all of this is pretty strange and disturbing. But did officers have enough to actually arrest Samantha from the very beginning? Well, she was eventually handed 7 charges, including giving false information to a police officer, public intoxication, battery on a peace officer, and 4 violations of resisting officials. So Samantha actually opted for a jury trial, which was supposed to happen in 2020, but with what happened in 2020, I couldn't find any information on what exactly happened at the end of this case. So let me know below, whose side are you on here? Who do you think was in the right? Who do you think was in the wrong? And if you want to hear more true crime stories, listen to the podcast Murder in America that I co-host with my wife, Courtney. It's available on all streaming platforms.
This is the cartel baseball bat video, one of the worst execution videos explained. Whatever you do, never go searching for this video. The video that I'm about to explain is about 5 minutes in length, and it opens with a message from the cartel that says the following: "This is what's going to happen to people who betray us." And according to sources, the victim in the video is a police officer. As the video plays, you see a shirtless man in shorts lying on the ground and is also blindfolded. The setting is in an empty concrete room, and there are 2 cartel members in the room with him. The one has a baseball bat, and he then winds up and hits the victim in the side of the body, making sure the victim is not hit in the head. This process is then repeated several times. The victim is hit on the back, stomach, legs, and arms countless of times, all while he wiggles on the floor in unbelievable pain. The video then proceeds to jump cut, and after every one of these jump cuts, you see the bruises on the victim become more visible. According to reports, the victim died from all the striking from the bat, and I can't imagine the pain he was feeling due to internal bleeding, broken bones, and fractures. Later in the video, the victim is lying on his stomach and isn't moving that much. He is then hit with the bat on the back of his neck several times, and this appears to kill the victim or knock him unconscious. The video then jump cuts again, and the victim has been stripped completely naked and appears to be dead. At this point, you see a cartel member carrying a double-sided medieval axe, and he then proceeds to dismember the victim's body. He starts by cutting off the right arm of the victim, and after this, he takes the axe and decapitates the corpse after a couple axe swings. The victim's head is then held up to the camera in the usual cartel style. The video then jump cuts again and continues showing the dismembering process. And the killer with the axe is cutting off the victim's legs at the top of the thigh. At which point the video then concludes. This video is an extremely brutal watch, and I highly recommend you never go searching for it. This is just another one of those videos that makes you aware of the brutality that goes on in this world. And it's absolutely sickening and terrifying.
Did you know that there's an alien buried in the state of Texas? And yes, I'm talking about the corpse of an extraterrestrial being. So this is the Aurora Cemetery in Aurora, Texas. It's in North Texas. And yes, inside of the cemetery, there is a grave that belongs to a supposedly extraterrestrial being. So this alien plane crash actually happened supposedly in 1897. On April 17th of that year, an alien UFO supposedly crashed into a windmill and crash landed on the property of local judge J.S. Proctor. This is actually what the crash site looks like today. I love how they've kind of gone with the theme. But everybody who came to look at the remains of this alien ship noticed that the person inside of it that was piloting it was not of this world. They even called it in the original news report a Martian. So what's interesting is that the town allegedly got together and decided that this alien deserved a Christian burial. So they brought it to the Aurora Cemetery and buried the alien in a Christian ceremony. Here's what the gravesite used to look like. It's got a little UFO on the side of it. So, allegedly, the wreckage from the crash was dumped into a nearby well, which was underneath the windmill that was damaged, and the rest of the wreckage was actually buried with this alien's body. So, in 1935, another man bought the crash site property from Judge J.S. Proctor. And he cleaned out the well, got rid of all the wreckage, but he claims that after drinking the water that was in the well, he developed a severe case of arthritis. And thus, he covered the well up with a concrete slab and sealed it permanently. So this is where the grave is marked today. I actually visited this cemetery a few years ago, and it's really strange to think that an alien might be buried here. So various alien researchers have visited the cemetery, and they've came to some pretty shocking conclusions. So at one point, people tried to deny the story and say that it was a hoax and that a windmill never existed on the original property. But a television crew actually found the remains of an old windmill there. And the guy who actually owns the land allowed a TV crew to unseal the well. They found a large amount of aluminum in the well, and the landowner actually gave them pieces of the wreckage. When they analyzed it, they found that the wreckage was made of aluminum and another unknown element. They couldn't figure out what it was made out of. And then we get to the grave, and this is crazy. So people have repeatedly asked the city for permission to dig up this unmarked grave. But the cemetery actually denies people that request every single time. I don't know why they're denying this request, if they just want to keep the mystery alive or what, but nobody knows what's buried there. And interestingly enough, another TV crew came out and did ground-penetrating radar, and they did detect an anomaly, which meant that there is more than likely a chance that there is a body under there. But because it was so badly deteriorated, they couldn't get good readings, and they don't know what the remains belong to. So yeah, I would love for somebody to finally figure out this mystery, because it's something that keeps me awake at night. But if you ever want to visit it, you can go to the Aurora Cemetery, and they actually have a plaque that tells the story of the alien that's buried there.
This is the Timothy Pitson case, the boy who has been missing for more than 12 years. On May 11th, 2011, 6-year-old Timothy Pitson was dropped off at school in Illinois by his father, James Pitson. He was picked up shortly after by his mother, Amy Fry Pitson, who took him on a 3-day trip to various amusement parks and water parks. But Amy Pitson's body was found in a motel room in the city of Rockford, Illinois, having died by suicide, with a note stating that Timothy was safe, but he would never be found. Between 12 p.m. and 1:30 p.m. on May 13, 2011, Amy Pitson telephoned several family members, including her mother and brother-in-law, telling them that she and Timothy were safe and not in any danger. Amy Pitson failed to contact her husband, however, who had been attempting to locate the pair, after being notified by his son's school that he was not present when he arrived to pick him up at the end of the school day. Timothy was heard in the background during the calls saying that he was hungry. At 7:25 p.m. on May 13, 2011, Amy Pitson was seen alone on security camera at a Family Dollar store in Illinois, where she purchased a pen, notepaper, and envelopes. At 8:00 p.m., she was sighted at Sullivan's Food Store in Winnepago, again unoccupied. At 11:15 p.m., she checked into the Rockford Inn in Rockford, Illinois, where sometime that night or the next morning she took her own life by slashing her wrists and neck and overdosing on antihistamines. At 12:30 p.m. on May 14, 2011, her body was found by a hotel maid along with a note. In the note, Amy Pitson apologized for the mess she had created and explained that Timothy would never be found, but was completely safe with the people who would care for him. Police found the knife that Amy Pitson had used to kill herself, and it contained her blood. Also, a concerning amount of blood was found in her car, which belonged to Timothy. However, a family member later revealed that the stains were likely caused by a nosebleed Timothy had suffered in the car earlier that month. It was also noted that Amy Pitson's cell phone was missing. An examination of her vehicle revealed that it had been parked in a grassy area, possibly near a stream but close to a highway. To this day, no new information has came out about Timothy Pitson or where he is. James Pitson, Timothy's father, stated that he believes his son is still alive somewhere. So, what do you think happened to Timothy Pitson? Did his mom sell him to someone for money, and with the guilt she took her own life? Or was his mom extremely depressed and she just gave him away to family members? Or was Timothy Pitson murdered? These questions cannot be answered to this day, and this case still remains a complete mystery.
When a man asked his wife to buy him alcohol, no one could have guessed it would end in murder. Danielle and Skylar Nemetz met in October 2012 on Facebook. Danielle was a junior in high school in California and was described by friends and family as bubbly and friendly. Skylar lived close by and had just graduated. They hit it off after connecting in person at a sports game where Danielle was cheerleading. The relationship started progressing really quickly, and Danielle actually ended up moving in with Skylar and his parents. Now, this was quite concerning considering the change in Danielle's demeanour. She was a lot more reserved than usual, and Skylar made no real effort to get to know her loved ones. Just 3 months after they met, Skylar proposed to Danielle. She accepted and then worryingly decided to drop out of high school. They ended up tying the knot just 5 months after meeting. Skylar was working in the army at this point, and the pair ended up moving away to Washington as he was stationed in Fort Lewis. Interestingly, the pair enjoyed spending time at shooting ranges. Skylar spent her time with her new puppy, and she also got a job. Although she was away from her loved ones, she did stay in touch. However, red flags about the relationship would be noticeable even from afar. Behind the scenes, Skylar was abusive to Danielle. He was controlling and had issues with jealousy and alcohol. Danielle told a friend that Skylar had smashed her phone in a fit of rage. In 2014, Skylar asked Danielle to buy him alcohol for when he got back from battlefield training. They were actually both under 21, so Danielle knew she would have to get someone else to purchase the alcohol. Danielle ended up contacting some guys that she knew who were over the age of 21. However, when Skylar found out about this, he would be incredibly jealous and angry. It was the 16th of October and Skylar just returned home. He ended up drinking, and Danielle was on FaceTime to one of her friends, and she seemed just her normal, happy self. Minutes after she hung up the phone, she would be dead. A neighbour called police to report gunfire. They arrived to the scene to find Danielle dead. Skylar had shot her and then put all of the firearms in the house away and also